Today we have Tim Tomlinson, a professor of writing in New York University, an author and a co-founder of New York Writers Workshop. Welcome you, sir.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Why did you choose Nepal for this year's New York Writers Workshop?
Nepal had been on our radar for several years. We'd actually planned to come here, I think, in 2021 or 22. As you know, COVID had other plans. So we had already set up the conference. We had begun doing some of the planning, but COVID interrupted all man's plans. So we put it on the back burner. In between, we went to Athens, Greece. And here we are today. Part of that, of course, I have to give full credit to our dear friend and colleague, Yuyutsu Sharma, who did so much of the groundwork and all the setup. But if it weren't for Yuyu, we wouldn't be here. We're wonderful friends back in New York City. That's why.
And how was your experience in Nepal, as an organizer of New York Writers Workshop?
Very exciting, very stimulating. Part of the great gratification we receive by doing things like this is to bring people who haven't really been to various parts of the world to new places. And I just remember landing here and immediately beginning to see the location through the eyes of those who've never traveled in Asia. And I just thought, wow, this is so colorful, stimulating, exciting, and so unlike home. That feeling sustained all the way through. So we've been at one part of Kathmandu, then we came down to Thamma, then we went out to Pokhara, the drive out there, quite exciting. Some people thought the drive was the best part of the conference. And then we went over to Chitwan, met some rhinoceroses, and here we are again. So super stimulating all the way through from the urban to the wilderness.
And how did the participants feel, while in the workshop in Nepal?
Enthusiastic, committed. When we got over here, HLF, the Himalayan, hopefully the first inaugural annual or biannual Himalayan Literature Festival, that was really hectic with people streaming in from all different places. I think the excitement level was very high, the commitment level very high, the work done at a very high level. Plus the readings and panels were brilliant.
See, you are an author and a professor of writing, and you organize this workshop as well. And if we just wanted to know you in one identity, what would be that?
Well, I always default to writer. I mean, that's really my passion. That's my heart. A writer of fiction.
So you just introduce yourself as a fiction writer, and you write poetry as well, right?
I write poetry as well, and I'm realizing more and more that the categories they're not defining. So but I do feel as if I'm much more at home on the keyboard if I'm writing prose. That's the way my mind works. Poetry for me is a bit of a stretch, and I'm a little bit reluctant to say I'm a poet when we have so many great poets like my friend Yuyu and others here who write in the form first.
And you teach writing in New York University, right? Professor, do you think that writing could be taught? What do you think,
Oh, absolutely. I think any art can be taught. And I wrote a book called The Portable MFA in Creative Writing. I wrote the fiction section and the introduction. And in the introduction, I caution anybody who wants to write, working with anybody who says writing can't be taught. If they believe writing can't be taught, why are they teaching it? Dance can be taught. If you're looking at paintings, painting can be taught. What happens if you mix colors? What happens if you break the frame? Writing can be taught, talent cannot, but talent can be recognized and talent can be cultivated and encouraged. There are all sorts of ways that you can bring people to a higher level with their writing. So the notion that writing can't be taught is ludicrous, I think. But career success can't be taught. The discipline of the arts can't be taught, but it can be modeled. So part of what we do, I think, is to bring that sense of craft, to bring the discipline of the work to the form. There's a romantic notion, I think, that writing, everybody can be a writer. No, they can't. But everybody has a story, and we try to help nurture those stories.
Did you write anything while you are in Nepal? Did you write anything?
Somebody asked me a question in one of the panels about what gets me going if I'm writing, and it's usually the sound of a sentence. And on the way out to the lakefront, I wrote the sentence, "She died on the way to the lakefront." And everything else that we had experienced prior to driving out began to inform what followed. I had no idea who she was, but as I began writing, little by little, I started to discover the character, but it was the sound of that first sentence that got me going. And I've taken dozens of notes, and I've written a couple of ridiculous poems that will probably just wind up in the scrap heap, but I haven't had time really to sit down and commit to writing a full story. She died on the way to the lakefront, however, that's going to be a story.
And have you read anything from Nepali writers?
I have a collection of short stories by a writer who lives in the U.S. I can't remember his name. I've read several of his stories. He's apparently very well known over here. It might be something like Upadai. Does this ring a bell? So far, and of course I've read Yu. Outside of these two, I have not read Nepalese writers.
Do you think, poetry, writers in the world these days, they're writing more fiction than poetry? Is it true?
I don't know if there's ever been a shift in percentages. There may be a sense that one form is more appreciated by the public than another. I don't know what it's like over here. In America, nobody reads, period. There are a few people who read, but they read fiction or nonfiction. Memoirs are very popular, and nobody reads poetry. The poetry world is very small, despite the fact that some people become very well known. The audience for poetry is extremely limited, and that's heartbreaking. So many places we visit, poetry is in the heart of the people. The people know poems. Americans don't know poems, they know Taylor Swift. The world has changed in that way. We've had our culture kind of leached from us. And that's another reason why it's so important for us to travel and for people from other places to come visit us, because we see how poetry is in the heart of so many other cultures. With us, it's a different thing. It's a very sad thing that's happening in America.
And in Nepal as well, I think. At last, I just want to know what part of Nepal fascinated you the most in this trip?
The people, I think, in general, one of the other things that's been taken from the soul of Americans is a sense of the spiritual. And the spiritual, I think, is a guideline for the way one behaves toward everyone else. And here in Nepal, the spiritual seems to be part of the everyday fabric. It's just unquestioned. And it materializes in all these really wonderful ways, like bowing to the God within you. This is something that we don't do. I think there's a dog-eat-dog quality to everywhere, but there's also a man-respect-man quality here. One of the very short poems in my collection, Listening to Fish, is all men are created equal, not all fish, but all fish have dignity, not all men. And this is one of the reasons why I'm a scuba diver, because I feel as if I'm connected spiritually to fish who appreciate my spirit. But men in general, people in general, I think there's something lacking. Here in Nepal, it feels like it's tangible.
Thank you very much.
It's a great pleasure. Thank you.